And welcome back to Lead Yourself First, the Conscious Leadership Blueprint with me, Dr. Kevin Mays. Today, episode 5, Caveman Games, the hidden patterns that sabotage your relationships. I've really been excited about the latest work that's come out of neuropsychology and understanding how our brain works. If you've watched previous episodes, you understand that we have a caveman brain. When the caveman brain takes over, our limbic system's in charge. That's when we go into fight or flight mode or freeze. Either way, when we're in caveman mode, a stress hormone is being released by our brain and we're in a reactive state. Now, in those moments, we're not able to be our best self. Lose our freedom of choice when the caveman's in charge. We lose our ability to be truly intentional, to be purposeful, and to lead in alignment with the vision. Instead, when the caveman's in charge, it's a defensive position. We make ourselves okay and make the others wrong. We blame, we make excuses, and we, of course, become defensive. Remember, when you're in the caveman zone, you make your bed and you lie in it. Now, the interesting thing to pay attention to is that when we're in caveman mode, there is some patterns in that as well. In the same way, there's patterns when our success scripts are in charge, when the robot brain is in charge, when there's patterns of how we learn to be in the world, to be strong or be the pleaser or be a hard worker or be responsible or be the family hero or be the rebel. All of those are patterns that drive us when the robot brain is in charge. Recognize that there are similar patterns. There's an architecture or an infrastructure that we fall into when the caveman brain is in charge. And we fall into one of 3 general roles when we're in caveman brain. What are those roles? Through transactional analysis, they would say we fall into the role of the victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer. The victim, the persecutor, or the rescuer. These emotionally driven states put us in a position to make ourselves okay and make the other not okay. It's the ego justifying itself in those moments. It's easy to see when others are doing it. You'll recognize the patterns of that caveman behavior in others because they become hostile, condescending. They become the victim, or they become the persecutor or the rescuer, but recognize that you do it as well. And when you start to see the pattern in yourself and understand the early warning radar system that you have that allows you to understand when you're falling into that pattern, you can begin to interrupt it. But first, just the act of having awareness. That's a lot of fun to start to see that it's a game, right? To understand this game that we're caught in. And this game removes our power when we're in this caveman zone, when we fall into rescuer, victim, or persecutor. So let's tear it apart a little bit and look at these 3 games to understand with greater depth what it looks like for you and recognize that we all play all 3 games at times. Now, we'll have one of these 3 games that we might have as a more deeply ingrained pattern, but rest assured, we all fall into one of these 3 patterns. And understand this, it's not extraordinary moments when this happens. It's the absolute ordinary times when this happens. It's when our spouse makes a comment and we respond with a slight reaction, not intention, not aligned with our best self who's helping elevate the relationship, but instead in a way that says, or instead a way that says, you're the issue. Or instead in a way that says, I was only trying to help. In all of these moments, recognize there's an ulterior motive, and that ulterior motive is ego-driven, but it's driven by that invisible part of the ego that we don't see. Instead, we believe we're right. We believe we are right. These 3 roles that we fall into are really considered the 3 roles of the drama triangle, and recognize when the caveman's in charge, drama is coming. When we fall into the victim game, the victim, when we're in that place, we feel oppressed, we feel helpless, we feel ashamed. That's the caveman role that takes over when we're in the victim role. We act in those moments. We're out of our power zone, as if we have no power to change the circumstances and make a decision for ourselves. This is when we find ourselves complaining without taking action, and we seek out rescuers who can help us and act broken to avoid responsibility. The internal belief when we're in the victim mode is, I'm not okay, but everybody else is okay, or you're okay, and you're going to help me. When we fall into that victim mode, I'm not okay, you're okay, please come rescue me. We're often in the victim mode, inviting the rescuer. And the motive when we're in the victim mode is to avoid the pain of responsibility or the fear of failure. So it's really when we're in that victim mode and recognize we invite, these are transactional roles. So when I fall into the victim mode, I'm going to invite you into the persecutor mode or into the rescuer mode. And it's a dynamic that plays in this drama triangle. When I enact a certain role, it's going to evoke that in you. And remember, this goes back to the neural mirroring, right? If I'm elevated, you become elevated. And one way to understand this with greater nuance is through this drama triangle. So the roles are usually played out when we are triggered. This is the key to understand. And the key with awareness, you can keep yourself from being triggered. So when I'm in the victim role, I might invite you, you might step into persecutor or you might step into rescuer. But the key is to recognize that in those moments, we lose our power. When we lose our power, we will never be the best version of ourselves as a leader. In victim mode, for me, we incite the caveman brain of others who can, in the persecutor mode, for example, if we incite somebody to be in that mode, we view the world through the lens of control and rigidity. And often this is that dynamic that'll play out. I'm the victim, you become the persecutor. And you often feel that you'll believe that others are less than. They're just knuckleheads. They can't get it together. Why don't they measure up? Why is everybody a failure? Why does everybody suck? That's you in the persecutor mode, making yourself right and them wrong. And I think I mentioned in an earlier episode about this leader I worked with who told me, Kevin, he said, man, everybody I work with is such an idiot. And he was the executive of the organization. And everybody he worked with was an idiot. He's in persecutor mode. I asked him, why'd you hire a bunch of idiots? What'd he say? They weren't idiots when I hired them. So what's going on? They're falling into victim mode, helplessness, not doing what he needs them to do. He steps into persecutor mode. And the more he's in persecutor mode, the more they fall into victim mode. And it's this ongoing triangle, the spinning cycle that happens when they put their hands up and they play helplessness, looking like an idiot in his eyes. So he steps in, then becomes the rescuer to save the day after he's the persecutor. It's just amazing how this plays itself out when you start to tune in and pay attention. Now, the behavior when somebody is in that mode, when they're in the persecutor mode, they blame, they criticize, they set strict, often oppressive rules. And this is the internal belief when somebody's in that mode. I'm okay, you're not. This is very different than the victim mode, where when I'm in the victim mode, I'm not okay, you're okay. When I'm in the persecutor mode, I'm okay, you're not. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to step in. And often I'll find folks in these modes who micromanage. They step into a sense of controlling in those moments in a way that doesn't really help others out. In fact, the motive is to keep others down and maintain power in order to avoid feeling like a victim myself. So I don't feel like a victim if I maintain that control. And you'll see this a lot of the times when you just turn on the news. You'll see individuals who are triggered, but what they do is fall into that persecutor mode. Everybody else is an idiot. Everybody else is not good enough. I'm good enough. Everybody else is a failure. Unless you're on my team or you're me. Everybody else is, and that's how they justify, their ego justifies itself. The common phrase, it's all your fault. Oh my goodness. The ability to shift blame that we see in modern leadership is amazing. And the reality is when individuals are shifting blame, they aren't actually acting like leaders. And this is the thing, folks. This is a dawn of a new age of leadership. And I want you to really become clear and critical in your analysis of leaders around you and leaders on the news, on the media, leaders you hear about, people who are in leadership positions, but they aren't leaders at all. Leaders don't blame. Leaders don't make excuses. Leaders have the presence and the self-awareness to lift themselves out of these caveman roles. What caveman roles? First of all, leaders aren't in this poor me state. Leaders don't allow themselves to fall in the victimhood where they're not okay and others are. Similarly, leaders aren't persecutors. That's not leadership. That's dictatorship. That's authoritarianism. That's not leadership. Look at yourself. If you want to be an effective leader, you have to understand this. Whenever your mind is falling into a state that says you're right and somebody else is wrong, somebody else is an idiot, you're not falling into a leadership role. As a leader, your job is to elevate others. As a leader, your job is to help others become better, to get out of their own way. That must be your vision as a leader. And when you lose sight of that, you're not a leader anymore. True leadership is a conscious pathway. True leadership is a path of wisdom and enlightenment. So recognize when we fall into the victim role, that's a caveman role. When we fall into the persecutor role, that is a caveman role. Similarly, a lot of us will fall into the rescuer role. Now, the rescuer feels guilty if they aren't helping others, but their help actually keeps the victim dependent. They do things for others that others should be doing for themselves. So many individuals fall into this rescuer role, and it's really like a sense of fine, I'll just do it myself. And it's the old voice of mom ringing in our brains, right? Fine. If I want it done right, I'll do it myself. Oh, that really is a rescuer role, sweeping in to do things for others that they should be doing for themselves. And a lot of it is driven by those old success scripts of being a hard worker, being responsible, being dutiful, being correct, being right, being smart. All of these roles underlying can drive us when we're in the caveman mode to fall into that rescue role. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. And in doing so, we hold them off the hook. We don't create accountability in our systems because of our own emotionality. Now, the behavior that you'll notice when people are in that rescuer mode is they often overfunction or offer unsolicited advice. They save people who didn't ask to be saved. I know leaders, every time somebody brings up an issue, the first thing the leader comes in with 1,000 ways to solve it. People don't want issues solved by somebody else, right? They want to be able to vent. They want validation for their emotional state. They want to feel heard and witnessed, not fixed. But when individuals, and the interesting thing is, we'll have an addiction to these emotional caveman states. I know folks who always default to rescuer. They're always going to go be the one who steps in and fixes the situation. Individuals avoid them like the plague because people don't want to be fixed. They want to be heard, understood, and then they want to have somebody who can elevate them and bring out the best, not fix their problem. Now, this also has a similar internal belief as the persecutor. I'm okay. You're not okay, but I can fix you. You ever met somebody like that who is determined they're going to fix you? No matter what, they're going to be the fixer. No, it's motivated by this need to feel needed or to avoid focusing on our own problems, which is what that rescuer role does so well. They avoid looking at their own problems. And instead, they feel needed, which validates them. And it takes the focus off them and their own problems, which often I've seen with rescuers. They've got a storehouse of them under the surface. But instead of focusing on them, they're going to focus on how well they can focus on fixing you because I'm okay, you're not okay. All of these are in transactional analysis in that language. I'd say just dysfunctional, right? It's the caveman brain at play. None of these are genius brain. And really the common phrase, oh, let me do that for you. Let me help you out. It's disguised as being helpful, but really it's fostering dependency. I've seen it in organizations where individual leaders really are uncomfortable holding others accountable. So they pick up the ball themselves and they train the organization. They train victims in the organization. And then they step in as the rescuer. And then they get frustrated and become the persecutor, which others then step in and become the rescuer. It's the shifting triangle. Pay attention. You'll see it in others. You'll see it in your leaders. You'll see it in your direct reports. You'll see it in your peers. You'll see it at home with your spouse. In fact, you'll engage through this lens with your spouse on a daily basis. So think about, what role do you play? Are you more likely to fall into the persecutor role, to the victim role, to the rescuer role? I've seen it at home fronts. I watched one husband who was just absolutely fell into the role of helplessness. That was his role. Oh, I don't know anything. Oh, I'm just a fool. Because his wife was consistently a persecutor. So he just fell into that role. And there was no truth. It was just a human dynamic that had evolved. He learned to keep his head down, to be the helpless one. She learned it to be the one who was always frustrated and angry. And so he was the helpless one. These are roles, they're dysfunctional roles. They don't allow us to be the best version of ourselves. They don't allow us to access the genius within. Now, remember, step one is developing presence, to be able to come back to the present moment so that from that foundation of presence, you can step firmly into a deeper state of awareness. It's easy to be aware of what others are doing. And remember, the difficulty in turning it back on yourself is starting to notice your own internal narrative. What role are you playing? When you have an awareness of what role you're playing, the victim, the rescuer, or the persecutor, then you're in a power position. You're in a position to choose to do it differently and recognize you can't change other people. If they're the persecutor and you see somebody consistently in your life who falls into the persecutor role, that's a human dynamic at play. That's not them independent. That's them in relation to you. When you change your role, they will change. This is guaranteed. Pay attention, interrupt the pattern, and move forward with intention. You'll change everything. So pay attention. This is Dr. Kevin reminding you to lead yourself first. When you change yourself, you change the game. Bye for now.